Yeah, well, I mean, we've been speaking a lot about like attribution modeling. Attribution modeling relies a lot on click streams and having user level event data, but I think that the landscape is going to shift towards like marketing mix modeling or media mix modeling, which is more of like a holistic, probabilistic way to look back at what happened. Like there's drawbacks to it for sure. Like attribution modeling, we're used to having attribution for yesterday, and we can see how much we spent, what did we get for it, how many first jobs or how many signups. Media mix modeling, especially if you're building it in-house, is going to require a data science, like a Bayesian like kind of approach to it. So it can be very expensive. There are companies that can help you do it as well, third-party companies that you can leverage to help do this stuff as well. But I think the future is going to be a lot more reliant on media mix modeling. And I think that kind of brings us also to what are the shortcomings of attribution modeling, right? Because attribution modeling is based off of clicks. But the bigger the company gets, the more you're spending money on not click-based marketing. So Uber, for example, is a massive brand that is spending a lot of money on long-term strategies like brand marketing. And brand marketing like TV ads, billboards, direct mail, how do you actually log a click for those things? You can't really. And so attribution modeling definitely falls short in those scenarios, but then media mix modeling is something that holistically looks at the entire marketing picture and budget and uses data science to basically mathematically get to a point where we think the contribution of these ads is this. And then also like incrementality testing, I think, is going to be another thing that needs to be like leveraged by companies internally, especially as privacy kind of takes over. And so my recommendation is always get started on these things today, start thinking about these things today, because it's better to slowly pull the band-aid off yourself rather than when Google or Apple decides to rip it off for you. And so it's always good to get ahead of the curve. Still leverage the data you have today, but think about the future and think about what's coming in the next year or two. Incrementality, like as like the word itself, is like little small improvements. And so when you're measuring incrementality, you're measuring what would happen if we didn't run these ads. Because there's a lot of cannibalization, there's a lot of noise that comes into marketing, right? And so the overall picture, and there's actually a really good, I think it was a Radiolab, it was Freakonomics episode for podcast listeners out there, on like Airbnb, and I think it was eBay. There's a really good episode on eBay and like some incrementality tests they did in like the late 2000s. Where they realized that a lot of their marketing budget, they were spending a lot of marketing, and they did incrementality tests. So basically, okay, we're going to spend money and spend marketing dollars for this week. And hypothetically, let's say next week we spend $0, and let's compare what happened in those weeks and see if we can measure what the actual impact of these ads is. Because there's like a very common way to look at this is like there's something called there's brand SEM marketing, which basically means, so SEM is search engine marketing, and there's two main kinds. There's non-brand, which means if somebody searches, let's stick with Uber's example, if somebody searches rideshare app or drive, then Uber is going to come up because you're not directly searching Uber. But then there's also brand marketing. So if somebody searches Uber is still bidding for that spot there, even under their own name. Why? Because DoorDash is also bidding for that. Lyft is also bidding for that. But you have to also understand that there's some level of cannibalization there. And there's going to be some level of someone who is already looking for Uber is just going to click on that ad, and you're attributing it to an ad conversion, even though that activity would have happened without that marketing budget anyways. So incrementality, the TLDR of it is, what is marketing actually adding, and can we size and understand that?
I listened to that episode, Jarry. I remember. I think I actually mentioned it to Janet because I remember it was like some big campaign. They were spending like millions of dollars on some keyword, and somebody had they knew if we don't spend these millions of dollars, it will make no difference in the outcome. But it was really hard for them to pitch it and get people to agree that doing nothing will result in the same outcome this time. It's very interesting. Loved it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very hard to do that as well, right? Like questioning the spending of millions of dollars. I think it's so easy to think, hey, if we're doing this, it must work. But I think it's always good to have a healthy level of skepticism, when it comes to anything that we're doing, especially when it comes into the millions of dollars, because I think a lot of people look at ways to increase budget and look at ways to how do we get more money. But I think people in the same vein struggle with thinking of efficiencies and how can we increase budget allocation by reducing expenditure somewhere else. And marketing can tend to be like a good area to look for those efficiencies.